the crowd, they're never tame. Met PostGame Show brings the flame.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the New York Mets post-game show with your guys, Rob and CP. And that's right, just as Rob is pointing out there, it's a 6-game win streak for our New York Mets as they defeat the Miami Marlins by a score of 10-5 in these dreary, cold weather conditions up in Flushing, New York. But nonetheless, it's a series win. We spam the W's as always, and we'll do that here in just a second. But I gotta say what's up to my guy Rob. Rob, how you doing?
Offense came to play today, and in this nasty conditions, freezing weather, they came alive. They needed to. The pitching, a little bit of a crack, but still well enough to do what they needed to do. And man, oh man, did the offense come to play, and they needed it. They needed it, and Noah series win 6 in a row, and let's keep it going, man.
Let's keep the good times rolling. Appreciate you all being here on this lovely afternoon going into the evening time here, just around 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please do smash those thumbs up buttons as always to both streams. This is being streamed to my YouTube channel, to Rob's YouTube channel. We do the pregame streams, the postgame streams, and everything that you need to know about the New York Mets in between. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed to both channels already. And as always, drop those live chat comments in the chat. We want to know what you all, the viewers, the Mets fans, have to say about this game. And Rob, you called it. It was an offensive barrage. When we did the pregame, you had a feeling that the Mets offense was going to come out of the gates swinging, and they did. And Francisco Lindor did. And that is now 5 straight games for Francisco Lindor leading off the New York Mets with a base hit or greater as he produces a solo home run off of Colin Gillespie in the bottom of the first inning. But listen, this is a 10-5 New York Mets victory, and as is tradition on this Mets post-game show, you know what to do, Mets fans, everybody in the chat. We spam those W's. That's 6 W's in a row from 2-3 to 8-3. It's awesome to be a Mets fan. Let's go. Let's go, baby. Spam those W's. Hit that like and subscribe button. We definitely appreciate it. We got Dolo in the chat. We got Lynn. We got Alex, Ray. Oh, my goodness. Chicken sandwich in the chat. Whatever chicken sandwich is in the chat, it's a good time. You know that for sure. For sure. Wow, what do you want to start off with? You know what? I know what we need to start off with because Clay Holmes, some of the Clay Holmes numbers as we look at the box score here in the early goings of this post game, I think the final line for Clay Holmes is not indicative to how well he actually pitched. 5 1/3 innings pitched, which is his longest game of the season thus far in his third start of this season. Only 87 pitches. He does give up 4 earned runs because Huascar Braziban was not able to limit the damage in a very tough situation when he was relieving Clay Holmes in that 6th inning. I think the command early on was a very big issue for Clay Holmes as he gave up 3 walks in his entirety, but 10 strikeouts. That is the most strikeouts of any New York Mets pitcher in this early season. And again, Rob, outside of that first inning really and kind of where he left off the spot of giving the game off to Huascar Braziban, I think he did a phenomenal job. Some of the sinker command, like the sinker command was an issue early on, just like I stated in the pregame, what I was watching out for, but he really kicked it into gear. And speaking of kicked, the kick change also was being incorporated a little bit more than what we've been kind of seeing so far, as you pointed out also in the pregame. And the slider sweeper combination, however you want to classify that, was really sharp to the opposing Miami Marlins lineup. How did you assess Clay Holmes' outing? And are you impressed? Are you satisfied with this outing?
Yeah, this is what we needed to see, especially against a Marlins team that is a team that adjusted well against Senga, and Clay Holmes needed to adjust and use that kick change. I'm not saying throw it, a lot more, but he put it into his arsenal a little bit more today, and it made a difference. His sweeper has been outstanding, but moving that putting that kick change in a little bit more, you saw what happened. It kept them off balance. They were guessing a lot more, and it made him just look better throughout the day. And again, it's technically 2 runs earned. I know he put 2 runners on when Brazaban came in. Brazaban, a little bit of a crack in that armor. He gave up a couple of runs, but yeah, this was the performance that we needed to see from Clay Holmes. As you're facing the team the second time around, a bad team in the Marlins, and he did an outstanding job. He got through the 5th inning, and one more out after that, 5 in the 3rd. And look, I'll take that every single day. And look, was it perfect? No, but again, in these conditions, I mean, he threw over 80 pitches, 10 strikeouts. I mean, how can you hate that right now? I mean, that's exactly what we were looking for. And look, if he can keep this up, I think we'll be okay.
I mean, after that first inning, I was kind of a little bit peeved because I was like, listen, how many more outings are we going to go into the season with Clay Holmes not having that command? But he really got it going in that second inning and beyond. And it was just so delightful to see him bounce back after that 2-run first inning that the Miami Marlins were able to put up against him. And the conditions, like you said, is completely correct because Xavier Edwards, who led off the game for the Miami Marlins, had a little bit of a cheap hit, a ball falling in front of Juan Soto with that wind just pushing to right field. And the Marlins had to deal with it too. We saw, later on in the ball game when the Mets tied it on that Pete Alonso double that scored Juan Soto from first base. It was a very cheap double, but Pete Alonso, when you are swinging a bat that hot, the external environment definitely helps you out, and it definitely did in that at-bat for the RBI for Pete Alonso. We'll get into the offense here in just a second, but, even outside of the Huascar Brazaban, I guess a little bit of, I guess it was not the best outing for Huascar Brazaban. I will say that he does pitch an inning in relief after Clay Holmes gives up a couple of runs that was inherited to the, I guess, end box score by Clay Holmes. But, the other guys as well stepping in, AJ Minter, Danny Young. Danny Young looked really sharp, pitching a 1-2-3 inning as well in the later stages of the ball game, and Reed Garrett closing things out as well. Inning, the bullpen just keeps on rolling. And this is exactly the type of game that we were kind of alluding to. Yesterday, it was 2-0. The bullpen and Kodai Senga was very sharp. They kind of held down the offense until they were able to get enough runs going. 2 was all it took. But it was kind of the 180 effect here, where the bullpen kind of faltered with Huascar Brazaban coming in, but the offense did a lot in this ball game, and they poured the runs on 10 runs, 13 hits, no errors defensively, and that makes for a win, and that makes for a series win. So the bullpen was good again. Overall, Rob, you got to be happy with that as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look, we talked about it in the pregame. Eventually, the bullpen is going to give up a couple of runs, and the offense needs to take care of business and take over a ball game. And again, when it became 6-5 after the home run, you're like, okay, all right, the Marlins are putting the game up here, and you know what? Somebody had to come through. The Mets were putting good at-bats once again, right? The pressure got on a little bit, right? It was actually really cold. The Marlins got closer, and then you're like, okay, here we go. Started to trickle in a little bit, couple of good at bats, good couple of hits, and then Alonso with the bases clearing double, and then you went on from there, and that's what we need to see. We got to continue to see this from the offense because we knew they were going to break out. We saw a lot of good at bats. Even Brandon Nimmo looked like he had a pulse today and had really good at bats today. Got a couple of hits, which is nice to see as well. We still got to get Vientos going a little bit, but good news is the offense gave you 10 runs, the second 10 runs of the season, and 11 games in right now. I mean, there's not much to complain about, to be quite honest with you. Needed a little bit more length from Clay Holmes. He gave it to you plus the 10 strikeouts, and you just got to keep on getting that from if you notice, when you get over 5 innings, it helps it just a little bit more. I know we had to use a couple of guys today, a couple of guys out of the bullpen, but overall, it's just nice to see that the offense came alive when they needed to do so and pick up the pitching that, faltered just a little bit, but the offense took over the game, and that's exactly what we needed.
The opposite could be said for the Miami Marlins with I guess McCullough, who is their, I guess first year manager. I mean, did you listen to Gary Cohen in the broadcasting booth making just as many jabs as he possibly could towards the managerial decisions of the Miami Marlins, the positioning of their defense? And this isn't just this game, by the way. This has been the entirety of the matchups thus far. Clayton McCullough, first year manager, is really trying to figure things out. And I'm not really sure if there's a rhyme or reason to some of the decisions that he's making out there. I mean, you're talking about bringing the infield completely in when you're facing Pete Alonso with bases loaded, when he is definitely, has shown that he can hit into double plays in the past. You're talking about outfield alignments that is just absolutely asinine when Pete Alonso is coming up to the plate and he makes you pay for that with a gapper to score 3 runs. And he's lucky that the center fielder was able to run down that baseball by Tyrone Taylor that was hitting the gap, because that was probably the catch of the year. Otherwise, that would have scored 3 runs and we'd be talking about a 13-5 ball game instead of 10-5. So the managerial decisions from the Marlins perspective, I don't really know what to make of it, to be honest, but the Mets definitely took advantage, and this is the actual box score of it all for the New York Mets offense as they explode for 10 runs for the second time this season against the Marlins. Lindor led it all off with the solo home run. He goes 1 for 4, 2 runs scored, and he actually hits a sac fly as well for his second RBI of the game. Juan Soto collects another multi-hit game. So does Pete Alonso, tallying 4 RBIs, which puts him at 15 total for the season. That is second in the National League, beside, or I guess I should say behind, Kyle Tucker of the Chicago Cubs. Brandon Nimmo, much needed multiple RBI double there early in the early stages of the ball game. He goes 1 for 4. Vientos also gets a base knock there. So it really does. It's starting to seem, and you see Marte at the 2 for 3 as well with a couple RBIs. It's starting to seem like the Mets are putting together better at bats, especially the 1 through 5 hitters. What did you see from those hitters in particular? And we got to be talking about Pete Alonso, man, because he is making a case for himself. If you want to talk about the Vlad Guerrero Jr. extension, I talked about it a little bit on the post game yesterday as that news kind of hit out of nowhere a couple days ago. That's going to have direct impact on the New York Mets, I guess, pursuit of first base help when Pete Alonso, because I don't think it's going to be if, I think it's going to be when Pete Alonso opts out in the offseason if he keeps this pace. But what did you see from this Mets lineup 1 through 5?
Yeah, I mean, Pete Alonso has been outstanding. I mean, how hard it is going to be to extend him during the season if you're the Mets, especially with Guerrero off the board. I mean,
virtually impossible.
I mean, look at the teams that are going to need first baseman. Look at the teams that went after first baseman that decided, to not really, get 1 year, stopgaps because of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. possibly being a free agent. They're going to be looking at Pete Alonso. I know not a lot of people want to see this, but again, the New York Yankees brought in a stopgap first baseman. Why do you think that? Right? It was because of Guerrero, and I'm not saying Pete Alonso, but it's definitely on the table. There's a lot of teams, but I would say about 4 teams that probably want to go after Pete Alonso at this point, and it's not going to be easy. But what the Mets need to do is try to sign him. Like it's obvious that Pete Alonso is comfortable. Like he's very comfortable here. You can tell he last year, whatever it was, the contract on his head, whatever it was getting to him. It's not getting to him anymore. And you see, he just fits well. And we said this, right? We know how important he was with Soto for this, the addition to the lineup as a whole. And you see what happens when you got Alonso and Soto in a lineup, and then you just put Lindor and Nimmo and other guys in there. It just looks so much better. And you see when they're all clicking. Just look at 1 through 5. A lot of crooked numbers, 1 through 5. And I still believe this is probably the best 1 through 5 in baseball. Like even the Dodgers is really damn good, but just look, can Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, And let's even put Vientos in there. I know he's been struggling, but Vientos have been putting better at bats together. And oh, by the way, Marte needs to start at DH more often. I like Winker a lot, but Marte can't come off the bench. He does not look good anytime he comes up cold at the plate as a pinch hit appearance. He does hits when he starts. And I know a couple of people in the chat has brought that up in the past that Marte just doesn't look good when he pitches hit late in the game or during the game. He's better when he starts, and he proved it here today with 2 for 3, 2 RBIs. But overall, I mean, is there a better 1 through 4 in baseball? I mean, it's really that good, and you see it when they're hitting together. They're almost impossible to beat, especially with the pitching that we've gotten in the first 11 games of the season. I mean, there's really nothing to really like worry. I'm not gonna say worry about because that's not fair because it's baseball. Who the hell knows? But man, it's just fun. Right now, it's fun. We're 8-3, and just go back to last year, the first 11 games. It's a big difference. I mean, everything was complaining about last year, but right now it's a lot of fun. They're finding ways to win, even when something doesn't go right. They're still finding ways to win because it wasn't perfect today, right? We talked about the pitching. It wasn't perfect. They gave up a couple of runs, 5 runs. You could have easily lost this game, and people would have been upset about that because it is the Marlins. But man, the way this lineup and the way this pitching is picking up each other throughout the first 11 games is a great sign. And 8-3, man, it's 6-game winning streak, and we're going for the sweep tomorrow with Tyler McGill on the mound. Yeah, keep it going.
Take it all day long, 100%. I mean, really, like if you had this kind of performance from the pitching side of things yesterday, you lose that ball game, right? So it's just kind of, ebb and flow of the season when things really change situationally. And that's what good teams do. They just feed off of each other. They got down early in the ball game, top of the first. Clay Holmes gives up some runs, and the offense is just like, you know what? We got to step up today. We can't afford to only score 2 runs, or else we're going to lose this ball game. And guess what? They were up to the task. So that situation, and I wanted to point this out specifically, that situation where the Mets had first and third with 1 out, and the Marlins made the decision to intentionally walk Soto to make it bases loaded with Pete Alonso is exactly why this lineup is so dangerous, especially with a red-hot Pete Alonso to start off his season, in that 3 spot. And so really a guy that, which is me, I'm the guy that has been the proponent of Juan Soto batting 3. This is exactly why, on the flip side, you would always want to argue, and people have argued for so long, that you would rather see Juan Soto bat 2 if Pete Alonso, and this is really a key word that we were saying going into the season, if Pete Alonso was able to have this type of production, because we were even having conversations about maybe not having Pete Alonso bat behind Juan Soto and maybe making that Mark Vientos. Well, Carlos Mendoza was very adamant in spring training to make it the top 3, Lindor, Soto, and Alonso, and he's been rolling with that in every single game since the regular season started, and it has paid dividends, well, for the most part. But like I said, not really in terms of the overall run production, but really the top 3 hasn't missed a beat. It's really been the rest of the lineup that's been trying to figure it out. And you see in this box score that I just had up here a couple minutes ago, that's exactly why you have the top 3 as such. So it makes things so much more difficult for the opposing manager, the opposing pitchers, relievers, whoever it is on the mound, the starting pitcher, who cares? Do you want to face Juan Soto or do you want to face a red-hot Pete Alonso? Pick your poison, and that's just that. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it was the right move to walk Juan Soto. I know some people in chat were saying that, you're walking Juan Soto to get into a red-hot Pete Alonso. But, again, Pete Alonso has hit into a couple of double plays this year, regardless of how hot he's been. He has. And you're trying to get out of an inning, right? Whatever stupid decision to have a defensive alignment of playing the infield in once you walk the guy to set up a double play made no sense. I mean, it's elementary baseball when you walk the guy to walk the bases loaded to get that double play in hand or set it up. And you bring the infield in, gives your team no chance of getting that double play unless he scorches the ball and they go, it would be a a 2-2-4, double play just to get the runner at first after you throw the ball at home. So look, it's difficult if you're a team facing the Mets, especially when your top three are that good. And we talked about this. It doesn't matter if Pete Alonso's 2, Soto's 3, or vice versa. It really doesn't matter. When they're going well, they're almost unstoppable. And you saw it, right? That pitcher had no chance. You see it. Pete Alonso was just waiting for a ball he can drive, and he drove it in the gap. So it's just it's an unstoppable lineup, especially the top 3 or 4 when they're going well. And we talked about it. We knew they were going to start going. Now, hopefully, this is the beginning of the offense taking off. I'm not saying score 10 runs a ball game, but they should easily score 5 runs a ball game easily. And the way they've been pitching, they should win most games.
Yeah. I mean, that's just point blank simple how it is. And I also want to give a special shout out. And I feel like I've been doing this on a regular basis here with this particular player as we've been seeing the games over the past couple of days, especially after he kind of took over the starting role with the injury to Luis Torrens. But Hayden Sanger, another multi-hit game in that 9 spot. It is such a pleasure to watch him play the game. And you're also talking about a strike him out, throw him out situation earlier on in the ball game. So he's getting things done defensively and offensively. And not only that, because he went 2 for 4 with the run scored, but it's really an at-bat in the later stages of the ball game when Luis Angel Acuna gets on first base with a single after he replaced I believe he replaced Brett Beatty, right, in the ball game. And he steals second base. And that's what I call, by the way, an Acuna run, right? When Acuna is feeling himself, and this is like peak, Luis Angel Acuna, where I'm like, that's his ceiling, especially as a guy that can hit, 8 or 9 in the lineup. All he has to do is hit a measly single, like he did in the later stages of the ball game, steal the base with absolute ease, which is what he did. And then whoever's hitting behind him, let's say he's batting in the A spot like he was today, Hayden Sanger comes up, made it a point to situationally hit. Hayden Sanger could have got selfish. He could have said, I'm going to go for my 3rd hit of the ball game, and I'm going to pull this baseball, and hopefully it gets through the infield or wherever it goes to the pull side. He said, no, I'm going to inside out a 2-seam fastball that is tailing in on my hands and shoot it the opposite way to get Luis Angel Acuna over to third base. And then, knowing that Francisco Lindor is also swinging a very hot bat, he's going to get the job done, in which he did with the sacrifice fly for the Mets' 10th run of the ball game. That is what I call situational hitting, ladies and gentlemen. So shout out to Luis Angel Acuna for manufacturing that run with a single and stolen base, but also shout out Hayden Sanger, not trying to do too much, multi-hit game, but also realizing when it's time to get the runner over, you got to get the job done. And he did just that.
Yeah, situational hitting was non-existent for most of the year last year, at least in the beginning of the year, the first couple of months of the season. Even when they were red hot, the situational hitting wasn't very good. And you've seen it a lot this year already. Even when they weren't scoring runs, they were finding ways to, drive in some runs with a situation like this, with speed, with a little bit of contact, right? It's amazing what happens when you don't strike out. Right? When you put the bat on the ball, things happen, right? If it's defensive mistakes or just a bloop single, getting tied up with a pitch and still able to fight its way to into the outfield to get that base hit, and speed kills. And the one thing Acuna has done well, with this team is his speed. He's done it a couple of times this season already. The speed does play here, and again, it's going to be very difficult when Alvarez comes back, because Torrens has played outstanding. Sanger has been an excellent backup. And, I think there's a little bit of pressure on Francisco Alvarez, because you can't not play well defensively and offensively, because people are going to start, chirping a little bit. I know people still like Alvarez, but when you got Torrens and Sanger really they're not just doing the job. They're just not filling in. They're actually performing. They're actually doing well, both of them. And when Alvarez does come back, it's gonna be very interesting how they're going to play this. Are they gonna play him a lot and often? Because any lack slacking of the defense from Alvarez, we'll probably even be chirping about the defense that Terens and Senga have been, and even with the bat as well. So I think there's a little bit of pressure on Alvarez, even though the Mets are winning right now. Even though I don't know when he's going to come back, probably maybe 2 weeks or so he should be back, maybe at the end of the month.
He's starting his rehab assignment tomorrow, so that's the good news.
So slow play, right? Don't rush him back. Your catchers are fine. Don't rush him back. When he's 100% and there's no question, then bring him back. But yeah, Sangerman, it's just the little things, and that's why I think a lot of Met fans are so excited about this team, because we're watching it and they're doing the little things. They're winning low scoring games. They're winning 1-run, 2-run ball games, close games, something that was almost impossible last year for the first 2 months of the year. Winning close games shows that under pressure, they can handle it. And this team has handled it the first 11 games of the year. And listen, you're already 5 games over 500, 6-game winning streak. I mean, you got to win these games. April is the easiest month team-wise that you're facing throughout the year. So you got to take full advantage of it, and the Mets so far are.
Absolutely. I did have to change the graphic, and I do apologize to Xavier Curry, who did not get the L in today's game. I just checked ESPN midway through. It is actually Calvin Fauché who got the loss for the Marlins, so I changed that. Another typo on this post-game show. I apologize. I'll get it right at some point, I promise. But Sanger kind of reminds me of a better version of Tomas Nido, to be honest with you. No disrespect to Tomas Nido, but it's like, that these guys are AAA catchers, and now they're getting the chance to start. Tomas Nido's getting a chance to start, and I was just like, dude, what are we doing here for the longest time? And Sanger is actually probably the better ball player than Tomas Nido, especially offensively. You seem like you get no drop-off with the defense between the two ball players, but yet again, when Alvarez comes back, and assuming that Luis Terens is healthy, with that contusion to his forearm, Sanger's going to be the odd man out going back down to AAA, which is kind of a shame because he is playing his way into some playing time. And is it a stretch to carry 3 catchers on the roster? I mean, what do you think about that, Rob? Because, I mean, you see some teams do it. I know it's not the most popular, but especially if you're talking about maybe, and Gary said this on the broadcast today, right? And by the way, we got to talk about Brett Beatty, because Brett Beatty did have a single in this game. He didn't really look the best at the plate, to be honest with you. He was getting himself down in the count again. He strikes out yet again. He goes 1 for 3. He has a nice little, infield hit the other way, kind of hitting them where they ain't. But, if the situation arises where the Mets send both Acuna and Beatty down, I mean, Alvarez, there's gonna need to be room for Alvarez. There's gonna need to be room for McNeil. So maybe that's the 2 for 2 right there, and you don't have any room for the third catcher. But I don't know, man. It's just like I would hate to see Hayden Sanger go down, as crazy as it sounds, with the way that he's been playing, because he has really impressed me. I have really thoroughly enjoyed watching Hayden Sanger play. We could be talking about an automatic out at the plate and still being happy with his defense, but we're not. We're not talking about an automatic out like Tomas Nido was. We're talking about a guy that is putting together competitive at-bats and finding ways to get on base. Really.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to mess with this team right now? I mean, is it possible to go with one less bullpen arm and send Danny Young down to keep that extra catcher, just to keep most of the position players on this roster? You could do that.
Then where does Daniel Nunez go when he's ready to come back?
I guess you worry about that when that happens, because I mean, at the end of April, you could have McNeil coming back, Nunez coming back, Alvarez coming back. So you got to make decisions on the roster. And again, nobody's going to cry if Brett Beatty gets sent down to AAA, but at the same time, you don't want to see Sanger come down. He deserves to stay up. Let's be honest about that. Danny Young has pitched well over the last 2 games. And I still like that second lefty, even though I'm not a fan of Danny Young. He's pitched better. And that second lefty can come into play when you face better teams with better left-handed batters. You've seen it in the Astros series when they have better left-handed batters. Danny Young was important other than A.J. Minter when A.J. Minter's not available. So that extra lefty could matter. But again, are you going to send somebody down that's actually performing well? And again, Sanger, all he had to do was just be a good defensive catcher as a backup. Any backup catcher only should be good with the glove and throwing runners out defensively. That's all they need to care about. But getting that offensive production from him as well and getting hits together almost every time he's at the plate or every time he plays is a great sign. I just hope they realize that. But again, it's a tough decision to make. But you know what? It's a great decision to have because there's so many ways you can go where I don't think people will be upset if they look. If you have to send Sanger down because it's just the way it is, all right, it sucks. But you'll know he'll be that first call up if anything goes wrong with the catchers again. Or if somebody's not performing well, maybe they just will go to 3 catchers. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. I think, I mean, how many times can you play these guys? I don't know. But we also have to see if Alvarez can stay healthy as well because he's been injured so many times over the last couple of seasons. So you just never know. And it seems like Sanger could be a good replacement if Alvarez, doesn't, stay healthy because that's been a problem in his career. I think you're on mute.
I was on mute. I'm sorry. I said I was saying that I think it'd be a different conversation as well if maybe the Mets were not seeing much production out of Starling Marte in that DH spot. But honestly, Starling Marte, I know that overall numbers don't really show it, but he's been putting together decent at-bats as well. And again, he gets hit by a pitch in this ball game. He is just a hit-by-pitch magnet, it seems like. He actually gets hit on the hand, which looked like it hurt, but he was able to stay in the ball game as well. Kind of a scary thing, especially when you have a guy with so much injury concerns as it is. But, if Marte really wasn't hitting, then you can say, oh, maybe we can carry 3 catchers and have one of them be the DH. But as David is saying here, and I agree with this even still, I know that Terrence bought himself a lot more playing time, but I still think Alvarez is a starting catcher when he comes back. I really do. So until that is not being displayed by Carlos Mendoza in terms of the everyday decisions, then I think Alvarez is going to be the starting catcher, whether people like it or not. But there's going to be a very big weight on his shoulders to come up and produce immediately, especially just holding it down defensively and, throwing some runners out and just keeping the runners at bay on the base paths, because that's exactly what Luis Torrens and Hayden Singer have been able to do defensively so far in this early season. I've been very impressed with the amount of runners, attempted stolen bases or just getting thrown out by these guys that have cannon for arms back there. So, and they're calling good ball games as well. It seems like these pitchers are very confident and very in tune with the type of ball game that these catchers are calling. So that's also the plus. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just don't know exactly, Alvarez's confidence can't waver just because these guys are doing a great job in his absence. He has to come back and understand that this role is probably going to be his, and he's got to play like it. And that's just the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more concerned about Alvarez's defense. Like you can't come in here, and have balls get to the backstop. You're not blocking balls. You can't throw runners out because again, that puts more pressure on the pitcher on the mound. Right. The reason why I think the pitching staff has been so good, obviously, not just the names on the back, is because, when you have trust in your catcher and even when you have runners on, you don't have to worry about them because you got the guys behind the plate, ready to mow them down. It's less pressure on the pitcher. You don't want Alvarez to come in here and not be good defensively and not be able to throw runners out because now it becomes pressure on the pitcher that doesn't have to be. And I think the bat will be okay. I think he'll hit just as well, if not better, than Torrens and Sanger combined. But I do worry about the defense because I still concern myself with the defense. I don't think he's very good behind the plate. I don't care what anybody says about framing pitches. That's not the only thing you have to do as a catcher. There's a lot more that goes into the game plan, and it's obviously throwing out runners, which the Mets have been excellent at, and the blocking of balls. I think maybe 2 balls went to the backstop or, was a pass ball because the pitcher kind of spiked the ball. Other than that, Sanger and Torrens have done an excellent job. It can't get worse. You can't have the defense get worse and then, tell your fans that, well, Alvarez is our starting catcher. Well, does he deserve to be the starting catcher? Sure. At this point, I don't like a guy losing his job because of injury. But once you're back and you're healthy, if you're not performing, I have no problem with Mendoza making that change. I know that might not help Alvarez, mentally, but we're trying to win ball games here. We're not trying to help, protect somebody's feelings. So we will see when he does come back.
You know what's very interesting about this conversation, and we're going to have this conversation going into this offseason as well, because guess what? Luis Torrens is only 28 years old, right? He's not like some veteran catcher that's coming in here and stealing the job away from Francisco Alvarez. He's only 28 years old, heading into the prime of his career, and he's got another year of arbitration left after this season. So he'll be under contract, arbitration pending with the New York Mets after the 2025 season before he becomes an unrestricted free agent. It's a very early discussion to have, but Luis Torrens is going to be part of this team this season and next season. So he's not going anywhere. And so that's just food for thought in terms of how the Mets are going to manage this situation between, Torrens and Alvarez. Because at the very minimum, when Alvarez gets back, he needs to produce at the plate. Defense aside, he needs to produce at the plate because there is a spot for him at the DH spot if he is lights out offensively. But that's another issue, is that we really haven't seen that thus far from Francisco Alvarez, especially for the majority of last season. So that's something where I was even kind of shocked too. I was like, Luis Torrens, I know that, he's got another year under his belt for the New York Mets, but I was like, how old is this guy? I had no idea. 28 years old ain't that old, man. He's not even in the prime of his career yet, so he's going to be around. And he's just a great all-around catcher. So Alvarez is going to have his work cut out for him. I still think that he's going to be the starter when he gets back, but he's going to have a lot of work to do. And there cannot be any drop-offs defensively or offensively because Luis Torrens is also swinging a pretty good bat. But the upside, clearly, with Francisco Alvarez, is the home run ball, the gap-to-gap power that Torrens just simply doesn't display. He's more of a singles hitter. Maybe he'll get you a gap-to-gap. He's like 7 to 8 home runs on the season, but that's his ceiling, whereas we've already seen a 20-plus home run season from Francisco Alvarez, and that's really the difference. So that's that. I appreciate you all being here. We appreciate you all being here. Guess what? Nobody won my giveaway. Nobody guessed the final score correctly. I don't think anybody was guessing that the Mets were going to put up 10 runs in this ball game. So maybe I will do this giveaway on my community tab as a repeat for that free brand new Mets beanie, that beautiful white and blue beanie, maybe for tomorrow's ball game, and kind of run it back with the same thing, guess the final score correctly, and hopefully somebody wins. But yeah, Rob, where are we going from here? What do you want to talk about in this game? Because there's plenty to talk about as we approach 40 minutes into this post-game stream, and I feel like we're kind of skipping over something. I just can't put my head on what it is.
Yeah, I mean, the offense was excellent. The pitching was, good enough today. It was still solid. They didn't completely break. They gave up a couple of runs, but that was inevitable at some point. It's just hoping that the offense, was able to score enough runs if the pitchers started to give up a few runs. And they did all that. I would like to see, Vientos kind of digressed a little bit today, which still he hasn't really, he had better at bats the last couple of games. And today, I know he had a couple of walks. I want that bat to get going. We got to see some power from him because that's when he gets that, that swaggy V back that everybody calls him. He needs that swag back. Right now, I think his confidence is wavering a little bit. And you could see he doesn't look, happy getting out of play. I know he'll take the walks and he's helping his team. But when Vientos is at his best is when he's hitting the balls over the wall. And until he does that, I think, he's going to struggle because he's not a single hitter. We all know that he's a power guy. We were talking about him being a 30 home run guy, 11 games in, you have none, that can get in your head a little bit. And I think that's where he is right now, but I think he's going to be fine. Especially if the guys at the top are doing their job, it just takes a little bit of pressure off of Vientos because he's not the talk, of the day. If the Mets are winning and the top of the order is doing their job, Vientos is not going to be talked about too much. So the pressure's away from him right now. But if the Mets start losing a little bit, you're going to start hearing it a little bit. But I think Vientos is going to be fine. But overall, you got Tyler McGill on the mound tomorrow. He's been really good his first couple of times out. I expect nothing different against the Marlins tomorrow. I think this should be a sweep tomorrow. It's going to be another cold day, and get it done. That's it. Sweep them. Right. I think we could be greedy at this point. The Marlins are not a good team. The Mets are a damn good team. Sweep them. I want 7 in a row. Let's get it done.
Yeah, and I don't really know much about Max Meyer, but I'm definitely going to do my homework in terms of who he is as a pitcher. And before, I'm assuming we're going to do the pregame stream tomorrow as well at some point if you are available. I'm not sure if you will be. We'll talk about it offline, but definitely the postgame, if anything. But yeah, Mets improving to 8-3 on the season, looking for the sweep. It's a series win, another series win for the New York Mets. Some things to watch out for around the league. I mean, the Nationals, James Wood just hit a 3-run home run. They beat the Dodgers last night, and they're up 8-0 against the Dodgers in the bottom of the fourth. The Phillies were up 1-0 on the Atlanta Braves, but they are now losing 1-3. I forgot. I actually don't know how the Braves scored their runs, but that's a couple of NL East rivals squaring off against one another. The Yankees take the L in the opening game of today. They fall to 6-5. To the Tigers by a score of 5-0. One thing that I wanted to talk about real quick in terms of the actual, New York Mets roster when Daniel Nunez gets back, because we're all talking about Danny Young this, Danny Young that. If the Mets are, and again, I don't agree with this if this were to happen, but I'm just trying to think from a David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza perspective. If they value, just like you said you do, the two lefties in the bullpen, Rob, and want to keep that tandem of Danny Young and AJ Minter in the pen, when Daniel Nunez is ready to come back up, the only other guy that you can really get rid of at this point that has two options remaining is Huascar Braziban, because he really shouldn't have made this roster to begin with. But now you're in a tough situation because he's been overly impressive in his first, let's say, 8 innings, I think, of the season. And now you're stuck in between a rock and a hard place trying to decide whether you're going to DFA Danny Young, who has no options left on his contract, or, send down a guy like Huascar Braziban that has 2 whole options remaining on his contract. So what do you think about that real quick?
Yeah, I think if Genesis Cabrera wasn't in the minors as a lefty, and we didn't have no other lefty depth-wise, I think Danny Young would actually stay here. And then they could probably do something with Braziban most likely, or somebody else. But Braziban is probably the only other likely one because of the options. I think they would have to still do Danny Young. I know they probably don't want to lose him, but when you have Genesis Cabrera in the minors as a depth lefty, I think you just have to do that. Unfortunately, Danny Young's starting to pitch better, which is a great sign. And, he knows his days are numbered when Nunez is about to come back. So that's just where they are right now. But you know what? It's a tough decision, but it's a great decision. It's a great situation to have because it means so many people are doing well in the bullpen.
Absolutely, 100%. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mets improved to 8-3. We spammed those W's one more time. I promised it. 43 minutes later, we are here. It's a New York Mets victory. We appreciate you all being here with us. Let's go! Let's go, baby. Let's go. We are hyped for this win on this lovely April 8th. W. I love all the W's in the chat. It means so much to us at all times. The Mets are looking to improve, I should say. They're not improving, but they're looking to improve to 9-3 on the season starting tomorrow, 1:10 p.m. Again, some more cold weather in New York. Today was very dreary. Today, the conditions were absolutely crazy. I actually appreciated the segment that they did with Steve Gelbs handing out the hot chocolate over there with some of the toppings as well from the producer or whatever, Russ, that was following them. But yeah, that was enjoyable. But yeah, we'll catch you all for the pregame stream tomorrow. Keep an eye out on that. And as well, the postgame stream, just like this one. We appreciate you all. Please continue to smash the thumbs up button. The Mets are looking to sweep the Marlins and take the first 5 of 6 games from Miami of this early season. It's an unusual time to face a team twice in the span of the first, 2 weeks of the season. But you know what? You got to get it done because these are the teams that you're supposed to beat very early on into this young season as we're only 11 games in. So again, Rob, final thoughts here before we sign off on this post-game show.
Get the sweep tomorrow. We got a 110 game tomorrow. Sweep the homestand before you head to Sacramento and then Minnesota. Get the full home sweep, and then we'll be talking about 7 in a row and being 9-3, and that's what I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
Absolutely, 100%. As always, I have nothing, to add on to that. That's perfectly well stated from Rob. As always, let's go Mets. We'll see you all for the pregame and the postgame tomorrow. Smash those notifications buttons, smash those thumbs up buttons. And if you have any friends or family that love talking Mets baseball, they haven't found our channels just yet, point them in our direction and make sure they subscribe. Talking Mets with Rob, True Mets Talk with CP. We'll catch you all tomorrow. Peace out. Let's go Mets.
Go Mets.